Much. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. I actually wish that I were with you in Hudson. I took a look at the venue where you're having your event and it looks wonderful. So thank you so much for having me. As some of you may know, I'm a judge in Milwaukee County. I was in the district attorney's office in Milwaukee for many years before I ran for the circuit court here in Milwaukee. So the big question is, why did I get into this race? And I got into this race for one really, really important reason. I just couldn't sit back and watch radical right-wing extremists hijack our Supreme Court. And that is exactly what's going to happen if one of our opponents, one of my opponents on the right, prevails in this race. Radical partisanship will become the norm. What we need to do is bring back normalcy and change to our Wisconsin State Supreme Court. I can tell you a little bit about my values so you can compare them to the values of my opponents. I'll tell you that my opponents are among some of the most political characters out there. They are so partisan, they are so right-wing, they so take their marching orders and will take their marching orders from Mar-a-Lago that I think it's important that you understand my values. It's pretty clear, and everybody knows that candidates for the Supreme Court cannot talk about the cases that may come before them in specifics, but we can certainly talk about our values. And when it comes to a woman's right to choose, my values are very, very clear. A woman's decision to choose is a decision that is between her and her significant other and family, between her and her clergy person, between her and her physician, but ultimately it is just that female's decision to choose. I can tell you that I'm the only female in this race who is willing to tell you what my position is in that regard. Let's talk about our democracy and how hard we are fighting to uphold our values and uphold everybody's ability to cast a ballot and cast a ballot that's going to count. The redistricting issue has been brought to me over and over again. I firmly believe that everybody should be able to cast a vote that counts. Your voice should be heard. That's not what's happening in this state right now. We all know about the gerrymandering. We all know about the maps, and I don't think anybody is ever going to say that that is fair. This state is really a 50-50 state. Some people call it a purple state. Some people call it a 50-50 state. But then you look at the makeup of our state legislature. You look at the numbers in the state Senate. You look at the numbers in the Assembly. And it's clear that we were teetering on nearly 65% of the seats being held by Republicans. And how can that possibly be fair? We know it can't be fair when you look at the makeup of our electorate and you look at how close the elections are. It's rigged. It's rigged for one particular party. Let's talk about our communities and safety. As a prosecutor for many, many years, I prosecuted some of the most dangerous, heinous, violent criminals to come before me. Armed robbers, murderers, rapists. And I can tell you, those very, very violent offenders, I have sentenced those offenders to more time than any of my opponents in these cases. Does that mean that there's not room for reform and not room for other options for people in the criminal justice system? Of course not. In Milwaukee County, there's a veterans court. We do lots of deferred prosecutions. We do deferrals. We do everything we possibly can to help people integrate into the community and become upstanding community members. But that segment that is a very violent offender, those people need to be held accountable. Marriage equality, I certainly see that as something that's going to be on the table in the near future as well. And I would say this, and this is critically important. As all of you know, and I'm sure you know, the results of the 2020 presidential election ended up in the Wisconsin Supreme Court chamber. And I would believe that it is highly likely that the results of the 2024 election may appear in front of our Wisconsin Supreme Court. And that is what makes this race so critical. everything we care about, everything, will be decided by who wins this election in our Wisconsin Supreme Court. So just to give you a little bit of background, I suspect that you all know this, but there are 7 seats on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. We have the opportunity to have 4 of those seats filled by justices who will uphold the law, uphold the Constitution, and not curry favor. And that is so critically important to have an independent judiciary. Right now, if any of the opponents on the right win, you know what's going to happen. They'll be taking their marching orders from Mar-a-Lago. And it's just not fair. It's not right. We in Wisconsin deserve so much better. And this is the first time in decades that this opportunity is being presented to all of us. So it is such a critical race. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Born and raised on the south side of Milwaukee to very hardworking parents. Worked my way through law school, worked my way through undergrad. My entire life has been rooted in community service. It's the only thing I've wanted to do, community service, which is why when I left law school, I went and I worked for the district attorney's office. Wanted to uphold safety standards, protect the community, protect victims, protect families and children. And that's what I dedicated my entire career to doing. Then after after Governor Scott Walker appointed Rebecca Bradley to the state Supreme Court or to the state circuit court, I ran against her. And I think that that experience gives me a really unique opportunity and unique background as to what is going to happen in this race. That is the only circuit court race, the only contested race in the state of Wisconsin where outside money came in and the Club for Growth came in.
Wow.
It's not a pleasant experience when it was happening. I could tell all of you that. Pleasant would be an understatement. At the time, it was pretty awful. Fast forward all these years, it gave me a very unique experience and gave me a lot of collateral benefits. I got to meet a lot of people and learn how to deal with those type of issues. So I will tell you that I'm absolutely delighted to talk with all of you. I promise you that I will be a fair and independent Supreme Court justice. I assure you that I am well aware of the issues that concern all of you. I can also tell you I've got very broad and deep support in this race. Got the public support of Justice Rebecca Dallett, the public support of Judge Lisa Neubauer, and almost 1,000 other community leaders, judges, and attorneys across the state. I hope that I can count you among my supporters as well as we move forward. If you'd like to, you can take a look at my website. It's janetforjustice.com. On that website, you can sign up to be a volunteer. You can ask for a lawn sign. We have lots of things going on. You can also ask to be listed as a public supporter. I would be honored if you would do that. But I'll tell you that I would love to be in St. Croix County. I'd love to be in Hudson. I'd love to be with you at that restaurant that you're at. I was just telling her, I looked it up and I saw those cheese curds. They looked amazing. I would love to be there. When you have an event on a weekend, I will be there. I actually ran a court calendar all day today. So I'm delighted. If you have any questions for me, I am happy to answer those.
I'm muted. Or I'm not muted.
Do we have any questions?
Janet, there's a question. How can we contribute to your campaign?
Well, Alejandro is right here and he can pop in and tell you how to do that.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. So unfortunately, as Judge Janet knows, and so does Judge Everett Mitchell, who's here, judges can't ask for financial contributions. That is why campaign staff has to do that. So if you would like to contribute to volunteer, please go to janetforjustice.com. There's a donate button there. And you can click to contribute. You can also click to help us circulate nomination forms. And it would be a great deal as we're nearing our end of quarter deadline at the end of this month. So thank you all so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a nice evening, everybody. I hope you have fun.
All right. Yeah, we have Judge Everett Mitchell that's on. Yes, he is. There he is. And hold on really quick, Honorable Judge Mitchell. Do you want to announce him first?
And now we have Judge Everett Mitchell. Welcome.
Well, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Thumbs up. Yeah, you hear me all right? All right,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Oh, you loud, man. All right, my name is Judge Everett Mitchell, and I am a Dane County Circuit Court judge, and I'm running to be your next Wisconsin Supreme Court justice. I'm running because I believe our state deserves a justice that reflects the diversity and ideas of our entire state. And so I've been running on this idea that justice is not what you say, justice is what you do. And so in order for me to kind of demonstrate that, that means that I have been some things in my life that I have done to benefit not only myself, but also Wisconsinites throughout our entire state. So one of the things I'm most proud of is that even before I started my career of public service, I worked with men and women coming out of prison as they were transitioning from prison back into the community. And I created a program called the Journey Home here in Madison. And in 2 years, we were able to reduce the recidivism rate of our clients from 70% all the way down to 15%, because we recognize that if you give people what they need, a residence, employment, support, treatment, and you give them those services, then they're likely to be successful and most importantly, not reoffend, and they can go back to living productive and healthy lives. In addition to that, even when I became a judge, one of the things that I learned from my clients then was that they were getting discriminated with housing as well as jobs because of how CCAP was worked and how people use CCAP to look up people's records. And so one of the first things that we did was when I became a judge, I was put on a committee related to CCAP. And the first thing I did was raise my hand and say, anybody who has a charge that has been dismissed, a charge for which a person has been found now guilty, or a charge for which a person has been found dismissed on a prosecutorial motion should be dismissed automatically and removed from CCAP. Because I was a prosecutor. And as a prosecutor, I knew that there were sometimes charges that you charged that when you got more evidence, you realized that you didn't have the evidence to prove. But the way that CCAP was written, the charge was still sitting out there. So the committee was like, no, we shouldn't do that. And so I said, well, let's pull the data. Let's see how many Wisconsinites still had charges that were still sitting out on CCAP that had been dismissed or they'd been found out guilty of. And we pulled the data, and over 200,000 Wisconsinites still had charges out there, in addition to evictions as well. And so that's what we did. We got those charges. We pulled the motion one more time, and we got that change so that now no Wisconsinite who has a charge that is dismissed or been found out guilty still has to sit out on CCAP. It was a moment of clarity because we had one of the individuals speak up in the committee, and they talked about a Black man who had a master's degree, but had a hoodie on one night, had his carry and conceal license, but had his gun on him. And he was pulled over by police and he was charged with armed robbery. When they got more details, they realized he wasn't the one who had done it, but he had already been charged on CCAP. And because he had been charged on CCAP, he was kept getting denied jobs and housing opportunities because they assumed that even though it was dismissed, that he must have been guilty. And so it was those kind of individuals that when we made that change, it was able to make sure that stuff was removed and people were returned back to their sense of dignity and their record was clean. And it also impacts evictions as well. And so even as a circuit court judge, I'm the presiding judge of our juvenile division here in Dane County, which means I oversee cases of family reunification, juveniles, civil cases, as well as family law cases as well. But it was one day when a young woman came into my courtroom, and she was a young blue-eyed child, and she came into my courtroom and she was in handcuffs and belts and restraints. And I said to my bailiff at the time, I said, bailiff, why do we have handcuffs on this child? And so I told the bailiff, I said, bailiff, go ahead and take those handcuffs off that child. And when I told him to take the handcuffs, my bailiff looked at me. He was like, "Oh, Judge, are you sure? Because, we're here to protect you." And I said, "Man, if you can't protect me from a 15-year-old child, then y'all need to get a new job." And so we went ahead and took the handcuffs off that baby. And then her head lifted up with so much pride and dignity. And so I realized that maybe what we had been doing was doing more harm to children rather than helping them, which was our job, is to help them. And so in my courtroom, we decided not to have handcuffs on children when they were coming in from jail, because it was about equity too. It was not just about safety, it's about equity, because some of these children didn't have a home. And if they had a home, or mother or father, grandmother or aunt, or anybody who could take care of them, they would come through my front door with no handcuffs. But because they didn't have one, they came from the jail, and that meant that they had to have handcuffs and belts. So we changed the presumption in our courthouse in Dane County so that no child is to come into our courtroom. But that wasn't good enough for me, because I didn't want what happened in Dane County just to be for the children there. I believe all of our children throughout our entire state needed to have that same dignity. So we filed a petition before the Supreme Court, and I went and I argued it passionately about, as a leader in Dane County, along with my colleagues in Milwaukee County. And we convinced the Supreme Court to put together and accept our petition so that no child throughout our entire state, so whether you're in Hudson or Milwaukee or Kenosha, Racine, whether you're in La Crosse or you're in Dane County, all of our children will be treated the same. So that means that no child will have to deal with the indignity of dealing with handcuffs and restraints. And so starting this past July 1st, they accepted our petition, and this July 1st, no child in our entire state has to come into any courtroom in any part of our state in handcuffs, belts, or restraint, because that's what justice looks like to me. And the way that I have chosen to lead our juvenile division in Dane County has led to better results. I know everyone is going to come and talk about public safety being on the other end of locking them up. We have chosen to think about public safety as not feeding children into the adult system, so that we minimize the impact on children, our system, and victims at the same time. As a result of our reforms and how we've chosen to approach, 85% of our young people do not come back into court with new crimes. I want y'all to pay attention to that number. 85% of our children don't come back. And we were so successful that we went from 4 judges down to 3 because of the reforms that we have made. And we no longer need the extra bodies in our system to justify that, because our numbers have continued to decline. And not only are my values about our children, our value is also rooted in my belief system. So I'm also a pastor as well. So I pastor a congregation here. And one day I was pastoring my church, and 2 women in our congregation came up to me and they asked me the question. They said, "Pastor, are you okay with us?" And I looked at them. I said, "Yeah, I'm okay with you all." They said, "Pastor, would you marry us?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to marry you all. Y'all been together 42 years. I don't know many straight people that's been together 42 years. So yes, I'm going to marry you." And I married them before the Supreme Court gave us cover to do so. And I married them, and I became the first Black Baptist pastor in our city, in our state, to marry a same-sex couple. And I'm the only open and affirming Black Baptist church in the city, in Dane County, because I believe in living out our values and living out equity and justice and fairness. These things are important to me because ultimately I was one of those kids who grew up a single mother. I grew up without knowing my father. I grew up in a situation where I was trauma. I experienced a lot of trauma and abuse. And yet, experiencing all of that abuse, I still wanted something and believed in the fairness for everyone and the desire to do something. But because I didn't do it, that abuse, when I got ready to graduate from high school, I knew I was functionally illiterate and I could not read. And so I had accepted a job bagging groceries. And then one day I got a call from a small college in Texas who said to me, "Everett, we heard you're a good student. Why don't you come try out college?" And I'm saying to them, "Your next Wisconsin Supreme Court justice." Was like, "No, I got a job bagging groceries. I'll be an assistant manager the next 6 months. That's what I'm gonna do." And the lady said something that made sense to me at 18 years old. She said, "Why don't you come try out college? If it don't work out, you can always go back to bagging groceries." So I was like, made sense. So I got all my stuff in my trunk, put it in my little trunk. Nobody in my family had ever been to college, so I didn't know what to expect. But I got there and I failed everything because I realized I could not read. but two teachers, Marbell and Daisy Wilson, pulled me to the side one day when I put on my backpack and I was heading out the hallway, getting ready to go back home and give up. And they said to me, Everett, you're a diamond in the rough, and we don't want you to give up on your dream of going to college. And so those women taught me how to read. They taught me how to study. They told me the discipline of going to work and to school and to the library from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. every day. And while everybody else may have been having parties and kicking it, I was in the library working hard, studying every day. And I went from making a 1.9 to a 4.0 in one semester. And that discipline gave me the strength to transfer from that school to Morehouse College, and then make my way to earn 2 master's degrees from Princeton, and then eventually make my way to the University of Wisconsin-Madison Law School. So I believe in the power of human beings to be able to come together and change and transform, but you have to have a justice that believes in everyday people, because we have a lived experience that teaches us and informs the way that we see the law. So our current Supreme Court justice and our justice system is so partisan right now that I believe, just like there should be a separation between church and state, that there should be a separation between partisanship and justice. And we need individuals who are able to walk in that space and say to us, I'm not just fighting against right-wing extremists. I don't want any kind of extreme. I want to make sure that the Wisconsin that we represent is a place for us to be able to know that everybody on that bench is representative of somebody in our entire state. And I believe that I'm the only candidate that brings a life experiences that will be able to give our community back that sense of balance all over again. And so that's why I signed into this race. That's why I've given myself, been all over this state. My wife and I have been traveling this state all summer, and I would have loved to have been with you all tonight, but I had to go ride a Black Hawk to go view a youth academy at Fort Hood today. And so I just got off that Black Hawk. And so it is a pleasure and it is a privilege to go around this state and see that our state is trying to move forward and it's tired of being pulled backwards. But a way for us to do that is to elect people who represent the essence of what Wisconsinites have always fought for, which is fairness, it's justice, and equality. And so I tell all my young people all the time, I said, I'm not just your judge, but I'm your reflection. And I'm here to tell our entire state that I'm not just seeking to be your justice, I'm seeking to be a reflection of what our state truly is and what we determine the future of our state will be. And that will start when you elect me as your next Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice. I want to say thank you all so much, and I'll be here if you have any questions.
You're getting a very good round of applause here.
Yay.
Any questions? You're universally loved is what, there's no questions. Yeah, how do we contribute?
How do you contribute?
You can't see it.
Well, I can't say this, and Sean will come on to say the rest. You can find out
Okay,
more,
great.
You can find out more about my history at www.judgemitchellforjustice.com. It has videos and it has all the kinds of things about my history, all the things that I've done. I can only talk to you just about a snippet, but I promise you, I've been working hard for not only our community, but our entire state for the duration of my public service. And I can't wait for you to continue to learn more about that work and feel excited. But I'm gonna turn the money part over to Sean while y'all think about another question.
Yeah, hi. I'm Sean Elliott. I'm Judge Mitchell's campaign manager. The best way that you can contribute is by going to judgemitchellforjustice.com or judgeeverettmitchell.com. There you'll find a donate link that goes straight to our Act Blue. And like Alejandro said earlier, we do have a big deadline coming up at the end of the month. So anything that you can contribute now would go a long way in making sure that we can get our message out there to everyday Wisconsinites. And we want to talk to as many people as possible. So the more that you contribute, the more that we're able to do.
We'll provide the links to the sites of both justices in the meeting notes.
All right, thank you
So much.